Good morning, once and for all of you, welcome. This is gonna be a good show. I'm sure that you can tell that already. I'm a bust. There's not gonna be anything good coming from me today. So thankfully, I'm not the only person that's gonna be on the camera. We've got Aida Rodriguez. Aida, save me.
We're gonna save each other today. I'm so happy to be here. And I gotta tell you, John, I really want to just say thank you to all of the TYT supporters, the TDR supporters. When I am on the road, they come to my shows and they make it all better. So even if I don't get a chance to speak to you, because I don't want to give you COVID or whatever it is, I don't want to compromise anyone because I'm around a lot of people. Just know that it is not lost on me that you show up. Thank you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. No, and I'm glad that you showed up, used the support. Although, look, we've got a little bit of good news here, and small stories that a lot of people probably aren't going to be familiar with. But one of our producers found this awesome story about this experimental no insurance pharmacy that I find very interesting. We're gonna dive into that. Some good hits in just a minute. We're gonna turn to some good hits against JD Vance in the Ohio Senate debate that took place just yesterday. Doesn't mean that all the news is good. We are gonna be talking about the flooding happening in Nigeria, flooding basically happening everywhere around the globe, but people need to know about it because this is the new climate normal, so enjoy that. And in the full show, in the aftermath, the Democratic Party has lost one member, and we're going to be commenting on that. Anyway, in advance of that, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button and sharing the stream, that'd be great so that people know we're live. And along the way, if you want to contact either myself or Aida with something positive, because I just can't take it today, then you can send us comments, tweets, and super chats, and we'll respond as we go. But with all that said, Aida, are you ready to start the show?
Let's go.
Okay, I'm ready to jump in the news. And during the social breaks, I have one or two little tidbits I want to touch on. So we're gonna do that too. But let's start off with the debate.
We need leaders who have courage to take on their own party. And I've proven that. And he was called an ass kisser by the former president.
That's not how you expect debates to go necessarily. Tim Ryan, who I disagree with on a whole bunch of stuff, hitting JD Vance where it hurts right there. But he's not exaggerating. He means it quite literally. Take a look at this.
Like just a few weeks ago in Youngstown, on the stage, Donald Trump said to JD Vance, all you do is kiss my ass to get my support. He said that. That's bad because that means JD Vance is going to do whatever he wants. Mitch McConnell's given him 40 million. He's going to do what he wants. And Peter Thiel gave him a 15 million. He's going to do what he wants. And here's the thing that's most troubling about this. Lack of courage is that after Trump took JD Vance's dignity from him on the stage in Youngstown, JD Vance got back up on stage and started shaking his hand, take a picture saying, hey, aren't we having a great time here tonight? I don't know anybody I grew up with. I don't know anybody I went to high school with that would allow somebody to take their dignity like that and then get back up on stage. We need leaders who have courage to take on their own party.
Hey, aren't we having a great time? I'm not crying. The lights are just in my eyes. I'm having fun right now. Mock me more, Daddy Trump. Aida, that's a lot of fun. We're gonna turn to the substance that they got into in their debate, but I loved these attacks by Tim Ryan because it wasn't just like demonstrating how like he had just let Trump mock him openly, but he tied it into campaign finance and a number of other things that I know that we care about. What did you think of Tim Ryan's tactics right there?
So I think that whether you agree with Tim Ryan or not's policy, at least you know he has a code. You know he has a bar. And I respect people like that more than the ones who are negotiable and bendable because they will break for you. They will turn their, not break for you, but break and you will suffer the consequences for them breaking. I think that, in terms of the level of decorum that exists in politics, all is lost. We have become the idiocracy, I know that we say that ad nauseum now, but we have become this society of people who feel that in the spirit of telling their truth, because truth is absolute and your truth may not necessarily line up with that. We feel now that we all have a microphone, we have a viral moment, we have no sense of respect for other people, and we talk to people in a way that we are appealing to the general public most of the time and not the person that we're actually talking to. Now, in this particular situation, I think it's important to point things like that out, because oh boy is a sucker, and that's what he's saying. He said, from where I'm from, we don't do that. You got a code. How dare you let somebody disrespect you like that on your own turf, make a whole birthday clown out of you, and then you go up there and lick his boots some more. Shame, shame, shame.
Yeah, and there's really nothing that JD Vance can say about that, because it isn't just that it's an effective attack. It's 100% true.
Yep.
And everybody understands every aspect of it. Like JD Vance knows that he literally would have no chance whatsoever if Trump didn't endorse him. That is, in a lot of these races, the only thing that matters. Now, look, Tim Ryan knows that criticizing JD Vance for getting completely unmanned by Donald Trump is not necessarily gonna hurt him at all amongst Trump voters, because that's what Trump voters want. They want people who bow down to Donald Trump in the same way that they wanna bow down. They are a people who feels more comfortable with their cheek pressed against the ground and a billionaire's boot on their neck. That's their most comfortable position. But it could hurt him amongst independents, and the mockery might get some Democrats to be a little bit more thrilled about it. But as I said, it's not just that JD Vance does have to kiss Donald Trump's ass, and everybody knows it. But as Tim Ryan pointed out, his candidacy is being backed to the tune of many millions of dollars by just a handful of billionaires, and JD Vance is just gonna do whatever they say. Like, he's not, like, we want politicians on the left that we feel like have led lives that have exposed them to the real issues that are facing people. They have generated some knowledge, some wisdom as a result of that, actually working on these issues. And then they take that perspective, that life experience to government, and they do something about it. But that ain't JD Vance. JD Vance wrote a book once, and now he's gonna give right-wing billionaires whatever they want, if that means that he gets to like put on a suit and a tie and stand in a big building in DC. It is really as simple as that. And while there's something that makes it a little bit less fun, which is that Tim Ryan, arguably is not the best on campaign finance himself. I would love more of these debates to be focused on pointing out people's donors, because people do need to know about that. And the media, of course, isn't going to do the work of pointing it out. So I guess the candidates have to.
I'm just sitting here in awe of where we are right now. And I'm just thinking about the poor American people, that this is what they have to look to for leadership. And more importantly, because you know that America is a corporation, whether we want to admit it or not. These are the people who are managing the funds that affect everyday lives. And so many people who are suffering and in need have to rely on these people to appropriate, and I would say misappropriate, the funds that have to do with their education, their children's education, their health care. And I mean, I tend to look at it from, a deeper level, because I'm just, this is what we have to pick from.
Yep.
This is what we have to pick from. And it's embarrassing and disheartening.
Yeah, 100%. Well, look, I'm not the biggest fan of Tim Ryan or whatever, but JD Vance is a disaster, and so yes, pulling for him. As of right now, by the way, to give you a little update on the polling, Tim Ryan is up technically, but it's as close as can be, and it has been. He had a little brief period where he's up by a bit more, but it is very much inside the margin of error. And like a lot of people, I'm very worried about the possibility that the polling could be underestimating like the right-wing vote. And here it doesn't need to by much, like literally like 0.5% could be enough. And so I'm very worried about that. There's not a lot of Democratic support for this race. They seem to think that JD Vance has it locked down despite the very close polling. And so while JD Vance is getting tons of outside money, Tim Ryan isn't really. And like this thing is theoretically winnable, and I can't speak for everyone. I would really love to not have to see JD Vance's stupid face for the next 6 years. So I would love it if the Democratic Party would support Tim Ryan a little bit. He wasn't my choice. I wanted Morgan Harper, but now we have Tim Ryan, and we don't want JD Vance.
The problem though, John, is that when you talk about the people who you are trying to appeal to, who have that cult mentality, see nothing wrong with kissing Donald Trump's ass. And that's dangerous because, those are the people that blindly follow serial killers and cult leaders and do the horrible things that they do because they have this groupthink, and it's so dangerous, and it's becoming more popular in this country. Donald Trump did not assemble a political following. He assembled a cult following of people who are poor, desperate, uneducated, and hurt, and others who are just racist, xenophobic, homophobic, and anti-Semitic. And he assembled all of the worst of us and the things that people are struggling with, and got them all united in this place of this alleged pain that they're experiencing. And so they blindly follow. So even when you point out this man has no dignity, why would people who have no dignity feel offended by that?
Yeah, 100%. Well, let's turn to a couple of the other topics that came up during the debate. Why don't we launch right into this?
The fact that on January 6th, we had 140 cops, United States Capitol Police, get injured during the insurrection when they tried to overthrow the government. Beat them upside the head with lead pipes, spray them with pepper spray. The one video we saw, the cop got jammed into the door, right? JD Vance raised money for the legal defense fund of the insurrectionists. This is the kind of extremism, JD, that we wholly reject. You have video posts. Don't even try to deny it. We got your Twitter posts and everything else. Everybody's seen it. He said, help these guys with their legal defense fund. Now, can you imagine one guy saying out of one side of his mouth he's pro-cop, and out of the other side of his mouth he's raising money for the insurrectionists who were beating up the Capitol Police? The one guy he tried to raise money for got 4 years in prison. This is ridiculous. I'm not taking a back seat to you. I brought $500 million back to fund police in Ohio.
Now look, that message, like a lot of Tim Ryan's, is not targeted at leftists. It's not intended for me. He's talking about massive infusions of additional money going into the cops, which I think there are alternatives to that. But he is pointing out that if you are going to pretend to be super pro-cop, which JD Vance will, there's a little bit of a flaw in that argument when you enthusiastically support the people that see cops as an obstacle to the totalitarian dictatorship they want. And they're perfectly willing to murder those cops with guns, with their bare hands if necessary. JD Vance is a fan of that. And I like that Tim Ryan's pointing out him raising the money for the insurrectionists. That's sort of a damning thing to focus on. But in a general way, like, you don't need to focus on that. JD Vance does not care at all about the fact that they tried to commit a coup, basically. He doesn't care. And when they try again, he'll be an enthusiastic supporter of it. From the outside, if he loses, from the Senate floor, if he wins, that is horrifying. That is incredibly dangerous. We can't take that risk as a country. And so I'm glad, Aida, that he is pointing that out.
Yeah, I'm glad that he pointed it out and unapologetically, and was very, very, had the receipts. He was like, don't even bother to even try. I got the tweets. I have the receipts, as the youngins would say. I think that it's just it is important to point out hypocrisy within the parties. People who claim to love people, and I'm speaking of both parties. Like, you can't love Black people and call yourself a Democrat and then be in support of policies that are harmful to Black people. You can't be a Republican and say that you care about police officers and then fund the defense of people who tried to beat them to death. And I like I said, I may not agree with some people and their policies and their ideologies, but I'm gonna always respect someone who tries to lean towards what's right and what is, a person of their contract, a person of their word. How can you trust somebody who doesn't care about cops if you're a Republican when you lean so heavily on Blue Lives Matter? How could you trust someone who is negotiable in that way? Only loves cops so long as they are in line with what they want. People who cheat like that, they will cheat you. If you want to cheat, you want to overthrow the government because the government doesn't give you everything that you want and does everything that you want them to do, and you are willing to risk order, then what good could you do for any person in this community that is in a situation that is not as privileged as yours?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a new hypocrisy for the right, but it's always been a weird one. Yeah. And it's a weird thing where I feel like I've had to be, I don't know if offended is the right word, but like on behalf of cops and soldiers, trying to convince them like, I get that like you're predisposed to like the right, but you know that when they fantasize about overthrowing the US government, you're the soldiers that they're fantasizing about killing. Like as a cop, they like you while you're on their side. And if you're ever opposed to them, they will beat you to death with a Trump flag. Like I shouldn't have to convince them that they should be offended by that. The very tenuous position that they hold, of like the tenuous position of support that they hold on the right, that's always been so weird to me. But anyway, no, continue.
Say quickly that from their elitist point of view, police officers are blue collar workers. They don't make a lot of money. They are here to do their dirty work and to maintain order and to keep people in line because they want to implement their policies, their laws, and the stuff that they're doing to keep everybody down so that they can keep getting rich and their kids being taken care of. So I dare to say sometimes that when cops get played, people are, of course, there's a police problem because there's a deep-seated issue within that, the psychology of what law enforcement is in this country, what the history of it and what it's rooted in. But the truth is, they don't matter to these people. These people look at them, that you are a nurse, you're a teacher, you're a firefighter, you are a blue collar worker that is here to do the service, and they don't want to have dinner with you. They don't want you marrying their daughters. They just want you to do the work that they sent you to do. So don't ever get it twisted in thinking that even though you may feel you've created your own power through violence and force, you don't matter to those people.
Yeah, beyond more than a symbol and potentially a tool of oppression. Remember how they treated all of those soldiers that came back in coffins from Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yep.
They supported the troops. They didn't care about them once they died. They didn't care about them once they had chronic illness and all that. Now, that said, I think we're gonna have to jump ahead to our last shot. I think I got a little bit too ambitious with that. So I found this to be a fascinating angle, and Tim Ryan actually like clued me into something that I hadn't known is true of JD Vance. Let's jump into that video.
You know what I haven't done? I didn't start a fake nonprofit pretending like I was gonna help people with addiction like JD Vance did. Literally started a nonprofit and didn't spend one nickel on anybody. In fact, he brought in somebody from Purdue Pharma to be the spokesperson for the nonprofit. The same drug company, Big Pharma, the big drug company that had all the pill mills going, got everybody addicted. 1 million people died, JD. 1 million people died. And you started a nonprofit to try to take advantage of people in Ohio. And you know what? All you did with it was launch your political career.
Those are obviously some very big charges coming from Tim Ryan against JD Vance. The opioid epidemic is a serious problem that everyone pretends to take seriously. The idea that JD Vance, who tried to ground the beginnings of his political career and caring about these people, if he was like starting up a fake nonprofit and working, collaborating with the actual company that's getting people killed on those drugs, I mean, that's huge. And I hadn't heard anything about this, so we looked into it. And no, it seems like Tim Ryan's really onto something. So when JD Vance founded his group, Our Ohio Renewal, it was a day after the 2016 presidential election, which is already suspect time to begin with, but that doesn't mean it's not a serious charity. He promoted it as a vehicle for helping solve the scourge of opioid addiction that he had lamented in his book, Hillbilly Elegy. Here's the thing, when he shuttered the nonprofit last year, and its foundation, by the way, in May, shortly after he got the nomination to run as a Republican for the US Senate, they looked into it and they found that the biggest thing they'd ever done to spend money on was sending an addiction specialist, Dr. Sally Sattel, to Ohio's Appalachian region. Now that sounds good. I mean, the idea that after multiple years of your nonprofit operating, you sent one doctor. That seems a little bit weird, but that's what you want. You want to be sending these doctors there. So who is the doctor that they decided to spend something like $70,000 on to do this residency? Well, she had ties to the maker of OxyContin, Purdue Pharma. And we're gonna describe exactly what those ties were. So she was a senior fellow at the think tank AEI. They have received donations and other financial support from Purdue Pharma for just $800,000, which again, by itself does not mean that she doesn't have an independent approach to the problem, that doesn't mean that she's doing Purdue's bidding, but there are other issues here. So first of all, Vance says, hey, I didn't shut down the foundation. It's just on hold while I'm running for the Senate. Well, you have to assume that you're gonna win, buddy. So it seems like this is shut down for many years. It's certainly not your focus. Let's be clear about that. They also say, we had no idea that this doctor had ties to Purdue. Now look, if Dr. Sally Satel had posted on a white supremacist website 8 years ago, I can understand how they might not have known about those ties. But if the whole thing is that she's gonna help deal with opioid addiction, what is the one thing that you would check for? Ties to the manufacturers of the drugs that are getting people addicted and killed. But they apparently didn't do that. And the issue is, he doesn't even seem to have a good grasp, not just on the people he's hiring, but on the group itself. At various points, he's described our Ohio Renewal's mission as to bring interesting new businesses to the so-called Rust Belt, which that doesn't even have anything to do with opioids, to fill some of the area's treatment gaps in mental health, which is good, but again, not about opioids, or to explicitly combat the opioid epidemic. And so after a couple of years, and him being able to say, hey, look at me, I'm doing this stuff for the Appalachian region, they sent this doctor there. She did her residency, to be fair. And when she left, she made public remarks suggesting that she remained as convinced as ever that addiction stems from combined behavioral and environmental forces. It is not a result of anything that the opioid companies are doing. It's not about overprescription or aggressive marketing. It's not about them forcing this on people by basically bribing doctors. It's all about you. You're the cause of your problems. And so I think, Aida, that it is a perfectly legitimate thing to attack him on. And for someone who's tried to use the mythology of this region and the problems that it faces as like his main draw, his main appeal, this paints a really sick picture. What do you think?
Disgusting, egregious. I am the daughter of a person, I tell my story openly. My mom was addicted to opiates for a very long time. She went in for a knee replacement and now she's in rehab this day. So to talk about that it was her fault, this woman who never been exposed to any Oxycontin or Percocet her whole life until she got, and then was overprescribed by a doctor in Miami, Florida, who continuously kept her addicted for 20 years. I had to take my mother out of the city of Miami and put her away from him and damn near get a restraining order because he was billing her insurance for over 20 years. And every time I would put her in a rehab situation, he would put her in a mental ward. That way it would absolve her of the addiction stuff. So that's my personal story. So imagine that times the millions of people who are still battling with that and the millions of people who have lost children and people to that. And the other thing is we sweep this under the rug because it's not like a street situation. It is a street situation. People are selling these drugs out there. So anybody who plays with that, especially in the state of Ohio, where they have had such a bad problem with this. Stop blaming poor, disenfranchised, marginalized people for their own struggle and oppression. The reason they're there in the first place is because these evil bastards who are constantly playing politics until it reaches home, and then you see them crying on television because they lost a kid or their wife is addicted. But they play these politics, they play these games, and you know what? the numbers are rising. And if you look at the unhoused and you look at the people who are struggling with addiction and mental illness, we don't have the programs in place to help these people. And these demons who are out here getting billions of dollars, that if they are gonna die and leave behind anyway, and the planet is gonna self-destruct. So what the hell are you trying to save, hoard all this money for? So you should pull chains and you should call people out for all that stuff. I know that those politicians are all struggling with their kids being not all, but many of them are struggling with addiction, because that addiction has now crossed over to all races, all incomes, all kinds of people are dealing with this now. So all the stuff you tried to sprinkle into the poor neighborhoods is now it's now decaying your own home. And yes, you should be called out. He should be ashamed of himself. They should go to jail. They should go to jail. Shouldn't just even be about paying money back, because you can't restore that's been taken. They should go to jail.
Yeah, and even with the fines, they'll never pay. It'll be a fraction of what they made. It's the cost of doing business, quite literally.
No, they should be ashamed.
Yeah. Oh God, there are so many races that I am going to be like frantically refreshing on election day. And look, JD Vance isn't like the number one that I have the most personal emotional investment in, but I really hope that he loses. That's all.
Me too. Let's agree on it together. Let's put some magic out into the universe, and we hope that he loses.
Let's try. Okay, with that, we are going to take our first break. When we come back, I'm sorry, the Kanye thing continues to, I was gonna say develop, but really, I mean devolve. We'll give you the details after this. It's gonna be exciting. I just hope, because I'm on the second show, I'm just like, I hope I don't like ruin the launch, that's all, because I know she's gonna be awesome.
No, you're awesome. People come to my shows and they just love you. Like people come to my show and they're like, I love John so much. Honestly, like people. So
I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, everybody, gird yourself for some insanity. The fallout from Kanye West's just blatantly anti-Semitic tweet. He still has his defenders, of course. Let's show you.
We know that their neighborhoods have been rioted in inner city communities, and the businesses are moving out of there. The result of Black Lives Matter has been white supremacy, assuming that Black Americans were stupid and emotional and would loot and riot their own communities to fulfill a false narrative about policing. And so we got to say all of that by wearing one T-shirt.
It's just so interesting. I mean, if you're triggered, as they say, by a shirt like that, no one who is mad about it ever seemed to ask, like, why? What if it said Malaysian lives matter, or anybody? You would, a normal person would say, well, of course all lives matter, but like, why does this make them so mad? It's weird and dark.
It makes them so mad because there is actually in this country a hatred toward white people. It is undeniable. The worst thing that you can be in this country, far from what they're telling you, I would say two things. First and foremost, a Black child in the womb of its mother. That is the most unsafe place for a Black child to be. The second thing is a white straight male, right? Because they perceive that as being too normal, right? It's too normal for you to be a white straight male. You need to make yourself somehow problematized by saying that you're trans, that you're suffering, that you're gay, that you're Hispanic, that you have a biracial mother, something. People are dying.
Okay, so often my position as a white straight male is tangential to the necessary diversity of opinion that we need. My sort of perspective has been all too often presented. But in this case, it comes in handy because Candace Owens there says, you should feel bad for people like me. Now, granted, she means conservative white straight male, which I'm not. But as a white straight male, I can say that the idea that the biggest problem facing America is anti-whiteness is a convenient dodge, a ruse by white people to hide the actual truth of racism. It is not difficult to be white, nor straight, nor any of the other things that she would say makes you such an automatic victim. And in this case, I can say it because I'm those things. It is a convenient thing that the right wants you to believe, and they are perfectly willing to use a tiny fraction of the massive financial resources they have to pay grifters like Candace Owens to help them push that message. And when it comes to the shirt, we don't need to ask why. First of all, not triggered. I understand exactly why she's wearing the shirt, why Kanye West was wearing the shirt. But for Tucker Carlson to pretend like, why are you guys offended by that? It's so benign. It's like saying Malaysian lives matter after he spent like a solid year pissing his pants over the fact that people wearing Black Lives Matter is rich at this point. And then for her to join the show and say that the looting that happened, the destruction, was the design of Black Lives Matter. That is exactly the sort of stuff that she's brought on Fox News to say. And it is convenient, Aida, that in talking about Kanye West's stunt there, they conveniently dodged the fact that he had talked about going DEFCON 3 on all Jewish people like 48 hours earlier, as if they hadn't seen that. I guess it wasn't in the news, so they couldn't know. But no, they have to pretend that they're opposed to anti-Semitism while running cover for a guy who's talking about waging some sort of maybe metaphoric war on Judaism? Sorry, there's a lot going on here. What do you think?
So first and foremost, I feel sorry for all the people of the world that are just regular people, whether they Jewish, Black, white, like I feel sorry for all the poor people, all the people, you think about like I've been to Israel and I've been to Palestine, and I look at the people, the struggle on the people's faces who don't have any power and are subject to all of these, all of this stuff that is created by people in power who want to maintain power and wealth, and supremacy, white supremacy. I think about this stuff and I'm like, these are the people who got the microphones, they get the television interviews. You don't get to see the mother like I met in Israel who has 3 kids that are in the military that have to fight. As soon as they turn 18, she had missiles on her yard. The woman in Palestine whose 11-year-old son came and got for interrogation. You think about the kids that she talked about, the ones that the most dangerous place for Black children is the womb. The most dangerous place for Black children in America is America. They can't walk down the street. They can get pulled over by a cop or a white supremacist and beat to death. They have, if they live in a situation where the socioeconomics is low, they don't have access to the better education, they don't have access to the better health care. The people who claim to care so much about Black children in the womb don't give a damn about them after they're born. We are tired of saying this. All of the talking points have been regurgitated over and over again. What are we gonna do to change? I don't care to address anyone like Candace Owens, who is running amok with all these white men who pat her on the head and then make fun of her behind her back. Who cares? Because a white supremacist is a white supremacist, even with the Black people that are around them. They can be married to Black people. They can have children with children who are Black. There is nothing to be said. Kanye West is not our king. And I want to take the opportunity to say that in this country, we make so much a big deal about celebrities. We have such a bad, severe case of celebrity worship. Look at the time and the news cycle that was spent on the Queen and Meghan Markle and all of that stuff. And we're not thinking about the people in this country who are starving, who don't have health care, who after COVID lost their jobs and their homes. The homelessness has increased. And we're having conversations about Kanye West in a fashion show in Paris, which none of us have access to nor care about because we're too busy surviving. And so when I think about all of Tucker Carlson, who at Politicon told Cenk that he feels that America is like a dinner party because he has the best dinner parties and he doesn't want people to come to his dinner parties that he's not invited. That was his reference to immigrants in this country. Why are we having conversations about people who are not worried about what they're gonna eat tonight because they got plenty, with regards to the people who are on the ground struggling? And I'm so tired of people. I'm Caribbean. I am a descendant of a slave. And I am so tired of people just playing with the Black people in this country. Black American people are constantly being tokenized, playing. They're just a pawn in all of these people's games. And what is not being given to them is their reparations. Take the money from them stupid ass shirts and put it into the Black community, and stop flying around in your private jets, in your ranches with your $700 pieces and speaking on behalf of people who are struggling. I'm sorry, I took a long time. I'm just tired of these people.
I understand, and you can take more time if you want. I agree. You know what? We had another video of Candace Owens. I feel similar to you. I think I've reached my limit for her.
Every time you put her on, every time somebody puts a video of her, you give those people a voice and you light their fire even more. We should stop playing videos of Kanye and Candace. They say Kanye West has mental illness, don't talk about him. He got plenty of money and plenty of resources that the people that are underneath the bridge outside of my house don't have, who also have mental illness. They're struggling. We are struggling in this country with all of these ills, and these rich people get the microphone and speak on our behalf. Kanye West does not represent the average Black American in this country. He doesn't. He does not. He can't speak on behalf of the people going to the towel mill in Georgia right now, making towels, working 12 hours for minimum wage and not having the proper thing, their needs properly met. They need to stop. We need to stop giving these people a voice, stop tweeting it. And even if you think that is revolutionary what he's saying, it is so harmful because it continues to stoke the fire of the people who hate Black people in this country. And when we said Black Lives Matter, we said it and we meant it and we don't take it back. That doesn't mean we don't have to keep repeating that white lives matter. White lives matter has been the standard and status quo of this country for centuries. We know white lives matter. They eat more, they get more, they have more freedoms and more services than anybody else. So shame on you if you white and you didn't take advantage of your whiteness. That's on you for being mediocre. Don't put that on us. We are here in spite of. We are slaves' wildest dreams. They never thought that we'd be here. So how could you try to take that away from anybody? Get Kanye, go Kanye. Donda would be disappointed.
Exactly. Go Kanye, we're done with you. And we're done with this block. I think we're gonna take our last break of the hour. When we come back, we gotta give you some updates on what's happening with the stolen documents and all that stuff. And then we're gonna turn to the absolutely devastating lethal flooding that's happening in Nigeria. So don't go anywhere, we'll be right back. Anyway, let's mix it up. Let's get dumb with this.
George H.W. Bush took millions of documents to a former bowling alley and a former Chinese restaurant where they combined them. So they're in a bowling alley / Chinese restaurant.
Okay. So Donald Trump stole a bunch of classified documents. That just happened. That's a thing, it's indisputable. And every day we greet the day to some dumbass excuse for why he shouldn't suffer any legal consequences for knowingly, repeatedly breaking the law. Now, it's that George H.W. Bush was hanging out in a bowling alley Chinese place or something with documents, and they should really look into it. And it's weird that they're not looking into it. I mean, it's not super weird that they're not looking into it, considering that George H.W. Bush died 4 years ago. But I don't want to spoil that for Trump. He's still catching up on reality. So anyway, we're gonna fact check this stupid theory of his because it turns out it's not accurate. Back in 1994, the AP reported that items from Bush's personal life were being sorted in College Station, Texas, in the old Chimney Hill Bowl. Now, it is true that part of it used to be part of a Chinese restaurant. However, uniformed guards patrolled the premises. There are closed circuit television monitors and sophisticated electronic detectors along walls and doors. There were some printed material that was classified and would remain so for years, open only to those with top secret clearances, because of the guards. Now, Robert Holzweiss is the deputy director of the Bush Library, a member of the team that worked at that former site, told People magazine earlier this year that it had been common for presidential library staffers to convert seemingly unusual venues into transitional spaces as the final building is being constructed, because what do you know? Trump left off. That's not where the documents stayed. That was a transitional space. He also left off some other things, which we're gonna turn to, but as examples of this, Ronald Reagan's documents and personal effects were housed in an old pasta factory. Bill Clinton's were in a used car dealership. Barack Obama's went to a former furniture store. Now, why all of these rich politicians are doing this, I have no idea, but they're all doing it, whether Democrat or Republican, so let's just get that straight. And importantly, it's not just that there were guards and cameras and it was locked down and all that. It wasn't Bush's place. It was run by the National Archives. It had security procedures set in place by the government, not by George H.W. Bush. Now, Trump, on the other hand, hid the hundreds of thousands of pages from the National Archives, with the Secret Service having no idea where the documents even were. And so, yes, there are a few differences between what happened at Mar-a-Lago and what happened at the bowling alley Chinese place. Aida, what do you think?
I think that the circus continues. And like I said, people want to hear what they want to hear. And when they get to that place where they are in full on denial, they got their huckleberry. He's going to continue to feed them the stories, and he will continue to tell them what they want to hear. And that is, demonization of the government to all the other presidents, everybody else. You ever had an abusive boyfriend or girlfriend, and I don't mean, it doesn't have to be physical, but those people who try to alienate you from everyone, that is one of the characteristics of an abuser, is to tell you that everybody around you is trying to do something bad to you, but not me. I'm always gonna be the one to take care of you. I'm the one that has your back. That's what he's doing. He's the abusive boyfriend. He's telling those people, every single president, yo, listen, they took the documents down to Chuck E. Cheese, and they were down there reading them with Chucky and eating on the pizza and playing skee ball. I did it the right way. And I'm not doing anything that hasn't been done before. And he's done everything that hasn't been done before. Yeah. And these people who unfortunately have never read the Declaration of Independence, even though they claim they stand for it, they don't know what the preamble is. They don't know what the quadratic formula is, because they're not getting the proper education. They are being preyed upon. And I'm not even trying to make fun of them. This is not me being smug. I'm one of those people who comes from those places where the books were 30 years old. I'm trying to tell you, he is preying on them and being mentally and emotionally abusive. And I just want them to look at their conditions just today from where it was 10 years ago. And I guarantee you they're in the same place.
Yeah, well, they're in the same economic place, but there's some libs that have been owned since then. So, things are looking up. Anyway, let's jump into another little update on this. We had told you, I think it was last week, that there were some early signs that one of Trump's lawyers that have been involved with the stolen documents might be looking to flip on him. And it is looking like that is the case. Christina Bobb, who was a former OAN host, shockingly, and a big media figure for Trump, as well as being his attorney, is apparently trying to save herself for having sort of lied on some documentation that she signed in her capacity as his lawyer. She apparently, in talking with the US Department of Justice, which she's been doing as part of her cooperation, named 2 other Trump attorneys involved with the case that she is alleging are the ones who are actually responsible for the bad stuff the DOJ is looking into. So what is this about? Well, she signed a letter in June of this year stating basically that Trump had returned all documents subject to a May grand jury subpoena. That letter claimed that he no longer had any documents identified as classified at his Florida estate, which was not only not true, but apparently they knew that it was true at the time. Now, sources close to Bob, the lawyer, say that she insisted the letter be written with a disclaimer, where she would only sign a certification that read it was, quote, based upon the information that has been provided to me, which at the very least indicates that she doesn't trust Trump, to be honest about it, and probably indicates she doesn't trust any of the other lawyers about it, which definitely indicates that you shouldn't trust any of them. This looks really bad for his legal team, and I don't know how significant a part of the overall case the DOJ will be making rests on what Christina Bobb can provide. But if she can demonstrate that they knew they had other documents and lied to the government about it, that certainly goes to a little bit of the mental state behind the crime. But Aida, what are your thoughts?
I think the worst criminals that we've ever seen in the history of time. I'm talking about organized crime because the Trump syndicate. But what I'm saying is they're so like they want to be so. It's just funny to me. I watched The Godfather the other day and I was like, yo, these are clowns. Like these people are clowns. The fact that they are all negotiable. They will all cover up their own hide when it comes down to it. There is no sort of organization. And not that I'm uplifting crime. I'm just saying, I'm just pointing out how dumb the whole situation and operation is. And at any moment, somebody turns and then Donald Trump starts talking about, their hairstyle or,
yeah.
Do that when he was talking about that Chinese restaurant, when he said that it was a Chinese restaurant / bowling alley. Did you hear the snark in his tone when he said Chinese restaurant? Like there's always a joke like that. He knows what he's feeding. He knows what he's feeding in this country, right? So when I think about these people who go in feeling like they have to protect themselves because they know, I don't feel sorry for any of them because they were able to participate in this while they thought they were going to win. And now that they feel like they're gonna lose, they're flipping on and they're the worst kind. They are trash. So I hope they all get in trouble. I hope they all get in trouble.
Well, they should at the very least look into getting lawyers of their own, I would say. In any event. Oh, what do you know? In late September, she did hire her own lawyer. So smart job there, Christina Bob. We'll see what happens to you. Okay, with that, I want to end the hour talking about a very important story. Whenever you're ready, why don't we launch directly into this video? That is video from southern Nigeria. And I thought it was important that you see the video because when you talk about flooding, it doesn't necessarily always paint the actual picture. That is catastrophic flooding across wide areas. One of the districts in a particular state in southern Nigeria is described as being 100% underwater to the level of roofs. Some buses still sticking out, other cars completely underwater. People are taking boats down what used to be city streets. And a lot of people have already died as a result of this horrendous flooding. A ship capsized not too many days ago. 76 people died because of the loss of that ship. Apparently they had been trying to get out of this region, but unfortunately, this is not open ocean. There were trees, there were rooftops, there were other things that the ship kept colliding with. It ended up sinking, and nearly everyone on the boat ended up dying as a result of it. They said 85 people were packed into a single boat. That combined, the weight of all of those people combined with the obstructions just proved too much. 600,000 people have already been displaced from this flooding. And in other regions, people have died as well, unable to be rescued in time. Now, the government is doing what it can to try to move people. These are massive amounts of people that are having to be moved, but it's absolutely devastating. And it follows a number of other horrendous instances of flooding here in the United States. Obviously, in the Middle East and Pakistan, there's been flooding as well. And some of it gets covered. Sometimes there's an acknowledgement of the link to climate change, but all too often this sort of news just goes undiscussed. And there are people that are still currently suffering, Ida. So I thought it was important that we make sure people know about it.
I appreciate you doing that. I think the internet has done a great job of dividing us, and we hyper focus on whatever groups we subscribe to. This global issue is a global issue, literally. And until we start to look at it from the perspective that we all need to save the planet, we can make all the plans that we want and be as greedy as we want and think about money and future. But if the planet isn't here and we're not here, what does it matter? So we should really be caring about this from a very global perspective, and we need to figure out how we can locally do what we can to help support the planet.
Yeah, even if it was just normal flooding, we should be helping as many people as we can. But when it's not just normal flooding, Well, we know that there's a link to climate change, and we know that a lot of this climate change has been driven by the activity of countries outside of Africa, Western countries that did all of their burning of fossil fuels they wanted for literally decades. And now other parts of the world are suffering the consequences of it. We have even more of an obligation to provide aid. That is unfortunately all the time that we have for this first hour. There's a lot more to come on the show, so don't go anywhere. Aida and I will be back after this.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Adarola. I'll see you soon.